Dr. Bright, is she? Can you mute Tamado? She can. Or can you unmute Tamado? I can see.
Hello, everyone. Greetings to all. You are welcome. My name is Tamador Saleh, the Vice Chair of the Planning Committee. It is my honor to be part of this conference and to introduce our speakers in the bootcamp workshop, communicating research to a wider audience, community engagement and policy influence, techniques for effectively translating research, finding for non-academic audience. Our speakers are Dr. Dumisani Hompashe and Dr. Hamidu Abdullah. Dr. Dumisani Hompashe is a senior lecturer and UPT head of department at the Department of Economics, University of Fort Hare in South Africa. His research focuses on the development of South African township economy. In November 2021, Dr. Dumisani was awarded the University of Fort Hare Vice Chancellor Award as an emerging researcher in the Faculty of Management and Commerce. Also, in 2019, was awarded a travel grant by the Africa Oxford Initiative to travel to the United Kingdom to present a paper of Oxford University. He is a member of the International Health Economists Association, also has been a member of the African Science Frontiers Initiatives, ASFI, General Assembly, since November 2022, and serves as a Vice Chair of the ASFI Senior Sub-Assembly. The second speaker, Dr. Hamidu Abdullah, is an associate professor with a PhD in local government and development studies from Hamidu Bello University, Nigeria. He is a dynamic professional now for his fervor for teaching, research, and community development. His commitment to community service is evident through his leadership role and CEO of the Initiative for Orphans and Vulnerable Persons, NGO, and his participation in various field and extension experiences aimed at empowering communities. In summary, he's a seasoned academic, researcher, and community leader with a rich background in teaching, research, and community development. His impactful contribution to academia, numerous publications, and active involvement in professional organizations make him a respected and influential figure in this field. We are glad to have you on board. Welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, I was struggling to unmute. Thank you very much, Dr. Said, for this excellent introduction. I also thank ASFI for this opportunity. In particular, I thank Professor Noire, as well as the leadership of ASFI, in particular the President, Professor Yunus. Our interaction this afternoon, we planned it to be an informal interaction where we would like the audience to participate in terms of this important topic, which is communicating research to a wider audience, because we feel that any research that one does, it needs to have impact. And now also, like, what is important in that regard is the communication of the research. maybe as a start, sorry. Okay. Maybe as a start, maybe if you can just write on your chat box, just to see our understanding of this question here. Why communicate research? Why is it important to communicate research? Can we see some charts there? Am I audible? Can you hear me?
We hear you clearly.
You're audible. You're audible. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, I can. Can we just now just answer this question? Maybe why communicate the research? Why do we think it is important to communicate research? Anyone, please? Okay, I can see for policymaking, for visibility, for knowledge, for sharing knowledge, yes. Guidelines, share knowledge, for sharing knowledge and become visible, to inform policy and sharing of new knowledge, to facilitate impact of research transformation. Yeah, I think, thank you very much for your participation. Yeah, I think these are some of the important elements that we can say they motivate us to communicate now research to a wider audience, because we understand that as researchers, even the style of writing, the jargon we use might not be familiar to other people. Hence, we need to have some strategies, some ways of communicating what we have written. And there are various ways or various platforms that we can use to do that. Just to consolidate what we have just received, like we're saying here, unless research reaches and benefit people, it does not have any impact. I think that's what we know, like in terms of the ultimate aim of research should be, it must do some change in people's life. Therefore, unless it reaches now the people, you can't say that your research is having any impact. Then also communicating research is one of the most important components for ensuring greater research uptake as well as its impact. Hence, this topic is very much crucial because if you want your research to have impact, it means that you need to communicate your research. You can't just keep research within yourself. You've just done this research, but now you don't inform people. You don't write articles, you don't write books, or you don't write maybe newspaper articles, so that at least now it can reach now a wider audience. Okay, also, we communicate research to inform and also inspire policy. I think I saw that there's also policy there that has been mentioned. To inspire policy and practice based on the information, knowledge, and evidence that we generate. Also, we need also, as we talk about this communication, we must be fully mindful of the fact that when we talk about communication, it's not a one-way street, but it's a two-way street. It's a two-way communication. Okay. Then now, coming now, there's another concept which is called dissemination. We have communication and dissemination. What is our understanding about these concepts? Is there any difference? If there is any difference, what is that difference? Can we maybe again, just by way of posting on the charts, just look at the difference between these two concepts, or if you see that, no, these are the same concepts, just say so. Okay, waiting to see some charts. Communication and versus dissemination. What is the difference? Is it the same thing? Okay. Okay. It's not the same thing. Communication is two-way, okay? Feedback is necessary. Communication expect feedback from audiences.
No.
Feedback, okay.
No.
Dissemination is a part of communication. Yeah, thank you very much for the feedback that I'm getting, meaning that we are communicating indeed. Just to consolidate what we have discussed here, starting now with the research communication. This one, it's whereby one, you deliberately and purposefully communicate with a range of stakeholders in order to enhance the goals and objectives of the research. Now, I've just introduced some concepts here, stakeholders, and also communicating or enhancing the goals and objectives of the research. This is now one of the important things that we need to consider whenever we are planning the research, that we need to also involve various stakeholders, even the participants, people now that we are going to be interviewing, they need also now to be part of that. Then looking now at dissemination, this refers now to the traditional dissemination model in which the sender, which is us as researchers, communicate research findings to the passive target audience, of which it was correctly said that dissemination is also part of the communication. And also research communication involves researchers and the users of research engaging in an iterative, dynamic, and collaborative process of communicating with one another. Whereas dissemination, it looks at informing various target audience and stakeholders about the results of a research project so that it can inform and influence their own work. Okay, therefore, this one is just saying that dissemination is a subset of research communication, whereas research communication is one of the main strategies of research for impact approach. Okay, then now this slide, it just also amplifies the role of dissemination, that dissemination also leads to knowledge mobilization, which ultimately leads now to the impact, like maybe it can be a change in behavior, and also that change in behavior also goes back to knowledge mobilization and also to dissemination. Okay, then now we'll be discussing what is known as the traditional research process. The way that we use to conduct research, I think most of us can really understand this. Like when you talk about the traditional research, it's whereby we carry out the research process or the research as researchers. The slide now is not moving. Just a moment. What has happened? Okay. Fine. Then carrying out the research, then you write now the research papers. That's what you normally do. Then you disseminate the results. In this case, we find that now the flow of information is one way. Then the users of research are viewed as passive receivers. And now in this context, I can also relate in terms of at my university. In the past, we find that whenever now we go to the communities, we experience like what is usually referred to as the respondent fatigue. People now were tired of being interviewed because they didn't see any value in this, because now they're not part of any research plans and also any feedback that is coming out from our research. Therefore, we need, in a way, as much as the research is important, also have to write papers, but we have to remember to communicate the research in terms of being inclusive, also being a two-way process. Yeah. Therefore, this is just a diagram that signifies the traditional dissemination model coming from the sender to the passive receiver, which is the direction is just from the researcher to the passive receiver, which is now the target audience. However, we need to have something like this where we find that there is feedback. There will be message to the communities or to the target audience, but at the same time, we must get some feedback from the communities. Then here now we will be looking at the elements of research for impact. We have firstly planning, which includes monitoring and learning. Then we have also the stakeholder engagement and strategic partnership, where you have other people coming maybe from various organizations that will be coming up with useful information about how one can conduct the research. Like, for instance, things like if you want to draft questionnaires, they can also assist in trying to come up with the right questions to ask for that particular problem. Then we have strategic communications, and also capacity development, which is also a part of your research, where you need to capacitate some individuals. Maybe it can be your students that must also be getting some skills and all that. Then it comes down to the influencing, whereby we talk about the influencing policymakers so that there can be some change in whatever problem there was in the first place. Okay, then how strategic communication, how does it link to the other elements of the research for impact? Here, in a way, we firstly define the change and the impact we want. Meaning that whenever one plans research, you need to start with the end goal. You define what do you want to change, what do you want to impact. Thereafter, you look now at the theory of change. How are you going to be able to arrive there, that impact you want to make? Then you look at this issue of the stakeholder mapping, whereby there will be some people or organizations that will be invited to participate in the planning of the research. Also, how do we engage stakeholders? Then also, this should support researchers' bids for future funding. Then this, in a way, will be increasing an article altometric score for the researcher, because like now, your research will be having an impact. Okay, now this just shows that when you talk about the research impact, we talk about the research dissemination firstly. Then it leads now to the co-production of knowledge, meaning any knowledge which has been derived through the research process is owned not only by the researcher, but also by the people who have taken part in that particular research. Then, as you can see here, we have what is known as the increasing intensity of the relationship between knowledge producers, which is the researchers, as well as the users, like from informing, ultimately going to the right, to the behavior change and social learning by individuals and institutions. Then, as you can see here, we look, when we talk about research, it starts from the individual, then it goes to the community, can go to the local government, to the national government, and also its impact can also be felt even internationally. Then I think, because of time, I must hand over to my partner in crime, Professor Abdul. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Am I audible enough?
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much. What we're saying is that there has to be some engagement and impact and practice. That's at the end of any research process. So next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you very much. So before you can communicate your research, it's very, very important for you to also take care of certain things. One of those things are what are your research goals? And then who needs to be involved to make these goals attainable? That means you involve stakeholders from the beginning, and not just at the beginning. Your research goals will entail you going to literature review and previous research, consult industry and other services on government. Then when you come, you now involve stakeholders, what is in it for them, and formalize partnership. Then when will you involve them? You ask them when and how and when they want to be involved, including opportunities for building capacity. If you want your research to have a very remarkable impact and then visibility and communicable to the audience, then what are your project deliverables? This will come in form of reports, applications, infographic, new program adjustment to existing services, awareness, and even behavioral change. Then how do you want to deliver the output? First of all, you have to answer the question, who will implement the evidence into practice? What expertise do you have or do you need, e.g. brokering, before you can now be able to? So all these are measures, all these are indices of what you can do before your research can gain wider coverage in terms of the audience. And then you measure your success through qualitative measures, through survey, through storytelling, you number of download, as we shall come to see later. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, in the course of research communication and research dissemination, it is very important to understand that you may go to the extent of knowledge translation. And this is the extent and application of knowledge by relevant stakeholders to accelerate the benefit of global and local innovation in strengthening health systems and improving people's health, need to be done according to the United Nations Organization, United World Health Organization, need to be done through knowledge or translation. That means even as long as you have a very good research work, at times you will need to translate that research work into a form that can be understood. For example, you translate a research work that is done in Arabic or into Swahili, Is he having problem sharing the slide? Dumisani, are you around?
Yes, we are still around.
Yeah, next slide. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Now, knowledge translation means different things to different people, but all it means is about putting research knowledge into practice. Knowledge translation provides an opportunity for end users to be consulted and to be involved in the research process from the beginning. And ensures that outcomes are relevant to their needs and can be applied in a meaningful and practical way in the shortest possible time. For example, now the translation of many other materials into different languages, for especially in the health sector, so that people can be able to understand what is happening. It's part of research communication. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, in trying to make it very academic and very clear, we can understand that by the time you mobilize knowledge through your research, you transfer that knowledge, then you translate that knowledge, you are invariably doing what? Knowledge exchange, and thereby engaging scholarship. And through this process, you can see all the cycles have a connectivity in between. Through this process, you are invariably communicating research to a wider audience. Next slide. Next slide. Are you with me? Next slide. Oh my God.
Yes.
Now this, yeah, we have some videos that we can talk about. I don't know whether we'll have the time. This video will take us through the terminology that define knowledge selection. If we don't have the time, we may leave it till. Okay, let's go ahead. Just listen to the video or watch the video, please. Okay, thank you very much. Next slide. Next slide.
Okay.
Next slide.
Okay. I'm trying, sorry. Okay, let me. What's happening now? Let me show it again.
While you're doing that, Dumisani, just to make an announcement, there are a few people who were in the were as moderators in the oral presentation session. Please, the committee needs your scores immediately. Latest in the next 10 minutes, please send to them so that they can compile things. If you were a moderator in the oral abstract presentation, send your scores to Eman, please. You can also see the chat. I will send it to you individually on the chat box. Please do that. Thank you.
Is the slide visible now?
Yeah.
No, not the next one. Is the next slide? Yes. This one is trying to repeat the old slide.
Okay. Maybe now is the challenge.
So in essence, before the slide come out, what we are trying to say is that research after being done has to be disseminated, and then when it is disseminated, you have the impact, and this is what the impact look like. As you can see from the chart, the impact is we have academic impact, we have cultural impact, we have economic impact, we have health impact, we have political, we have environmental, social, capacity building and training back again to the academic impact. So whatever research you are doing, you must ask, you must answer, be able to answer this simple question. Is my research making an impact? And these are some of the areas that the research is making an impact. From this perspective, you can be able to understand the level of impact your research is making. Next slide, please. Now, at the level of policy and research relation, we try to also look at it. And you can see that the arrow is indicating the movement from research to policy, then from policy and politics back to research, and then from research and policy goes in a cycle, and then from a research and policy come to a middle level. And that is what is happening in Africa. Most of the time, the level of research policy is not always there, but then there is the level of policy to research is also not there. Then this cycle is also not well filled. And then the interaction between policy and research is almost also lacking in an African setting. And that is why research communication is also a very big problem. Next slide. Now, when you look at the research communication, you see it is from the level of the input, then to the activities of the research work, then from the level of the output, that's the deliverables from the research project, publication, patterns, media, publicity, and the rest of them. Then you now come to outcomes. Output and outcomes is different. Outcomes are changes that occur, especially change in policy, and then the impact is measurable that occurs over time. Lower, for example, lower unemployment, increase quality of life, and reduce accident. So whenever a good research is done, this is how the pattern is. Like it's moving in a linear direction. Next slide. Now, what are the tips for planning impact? Now, these are the major concepts or terms that you should always look out for whenever you're planning impact in your research, so that your research will have impact. You must find out what is it that you are doing, and then why are you doing it, and then who is it going to benefit, and when. The time frame is very important, and how is also very important, and then the resources that is needed before it can now get to indicators. So these are very, very big milestones for us to take notice of in the course of our research work. Next slide. Now, what makes a good research impact? What makes a good research impact identifier? You see, before your research can make a very good impact, you must make sure that it is accurate and bias-free. That means it must be relevant, reliable, and consistent in a range of different circumstances. Then it must be timely, robust, and credible, and then it must be independently verifiable and replicable. I always remember Professor Bright saying that your research work must be verifiable and replicable, so that anybody can pick up your data and then do the same thing if you are really accurate and bias-free. Now, your research work must also be linked to clear target and baseline. I hope that those that have written proposal can now see from here that this is what is expected of them before it can have a very serious impact. Next slide. Now, what are the options of communicating research to the wider audience? Now, this is just some minimal options. Now, you communicate your research at a conference such as the ones that we have just done. You can communicate your research also as scholarly collaboration network, such as Scopus, SFI handle, and the rest of them. Then you have to also have institutional repository, which is very, very important for communicating research. And then you have some organizations that have preprint server that you can use in also communicating your research. And lastly but not the least is grant applications. People can be able to see your research work when you apply for grant, because they have to see what you have done before, so that they can be able to certify that you are doing the right thing. Next slide. Now, in conclusion, what we are saying is that for relevant stakeholders, they have to be aware and to be engaged with research outcomes. And communication of research to a wider audience is therefore a crucial step towards bridging the gap between knowledge generation and practical implementation, because it then paves the way for the application of insight, fostering a more informed and responsive community. And this session, therefore, our presentation, therefore, underscore the importance of not only conducting robust communication research, but also actively working towards its effective dissemination to ensure that knowledge translates into action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the impressive presentation on communicating research to a broader audience. I think the focus on plain language, storytelling, and engaged visual is important for effective dissemination. Your presentation is very great, include communication via dissemination, traditional research process, traditional dissemination, the type of impact, tips for planning impact. I enjoying for this presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Dumisani and Dr. Hamidu. Dr. Bright, if you have any comment or any question for our audience.
All right, thank you very much, Dumisani and Hamidu, for this introduction. I call it introduction because it's a skill that needs to be learned. It's quite essential, but it's not easy. Okay. As scientists, we have been used just to write and publish, and that ends the story. But the fact is that it's not complete. It's not complete when those who it applies to have not understood it first and cannot take it in. So science communication is important. In my group here, for instance, that is one of the questions we ask. Because if you look at across the world, if you do population surveys, we see a very steep trajectory in decrease in participation rate. And I believe that much of that perhaps is due to the fact that those who participate don't know what they actually do. They don't know what they are participating in. They participate in research, but there's no feedback. So I think if we have that connection in which we can go back to those who actually need what we have done to tell our story in a way they can understand, it will increase the chance that we'll have more people coming to participate in research. It will increase the relevance of our research. And so the issue of impact is fundamental. It's unfortunate that in the history of research and science, this is coming so late in our dispensation, but I think we need to take it up. So it's an introduction because we need now to practice. So I will send Dumisani and Hamidu, since they have now introduced us to this, to take us further. How can I do it? For instance, if I want to use graphics, how can I make my graphics in a way that it makes meaning to those who are on the street? How can I remove my scientific quote from my story and make it public appealing? Okay, so this is quite important for everyone. It doesn't matter the field you are. I think we can do better, and let's take it from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Any question, any comment?